You are managing an Azure Kubernetes Service, or AKS, environment, and you want to automate application deployment via Azure DevOps. Identify the 3 logical steps required, in order, to establish the necessary authentication and deployment mechanics for your pipeline.
The options are A. Provision a service account directly within the cluster scope. B. Register a new service principal in Azure Active Directory. C. Integrate an Azure Function App container task into the CI/CD pipeline. D. Add a Helm chart packaging and deployment task to the CI/CD pipeline. E. Incorporate a Docker Compose task into the CI/CD pipeline. F. Define RBAC role-based access control assignments within the AKS cluster.
This question tests your understanding of how external CI/CD pipelines interact with Kubernetes clusters. Specifically, it asks you to consider the process for authorizing an external service to modify resources within AKS. You should think about the workflow for identity management, the application of permissions within the cluster, and the execution of deployment commands to ensure a secure and functional pipeline setup. In my view, the correct sequence is B, followed by F, and finally D. To deploy an application to an AKS cluster from Azure DevOps, you first need an identity. Registering a new service principal in Azure Active Directory allows the pipeline to authenticate securely. Once you have that identity, you must grant it permissions within the cluster by defining RBAC, role-based access control assignments. This ensures the service principal can interact with your cluster resources. Finally, with the identity and permissions established, you add the Helm chart packaging and deployment task to the pipeline to deploy your application. Other options like Docker Compose or Azure Function tasks do not fit the required authentication and deployment sequence.